we're good. Welcome, everybody. So my name is Hurston. I'm a second-year doctoral student here at FIU, and I'm the host of Woke Wednesdays, and we have an amazing panel for you tonight. So if we could introduce everybody, who wants to go first?
Start over there.
Okay.
Y'all
Okay.
just gonna put me on the spot.
Okay.
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 My name is Danny. I am a fourth-year student at Nova Southeastern University.
What are you doing tomorrow?
I'm
Tell the
defending my dissertation proposal.
Hey. No. I am also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Okay.
And I am a marriage and family therapist, a licensed marriage and family therapist.
So if y'all need some help, hit up Danny. You also do something else, which is really cool, on Tuesdays.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I am very passionate about addressing the issues of racial trauma. So I run a racial trauma healing group every Tuesday in Tamarack, Florida at 6:30 p.m. I will give more information about that.
Yeah. So thanks so much. Yeah.
Awesome. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Gisela Charles. I am an educator. So I'm a high school teacher and debate coach. I work closely with students who are at risk. And my whole goal is to develop them. I am from Miami, obviously. And I'm a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. And I guess on my downtime, I'm just trying to help everybody progress and help everyone thrive.
Awesome. We're getting people saying congratulations, Danny. Yes, Danny. Mario said shout out to the Reds. I'm sure he'll say. Yeah. All right. Cool. Alexis.
Oh, me. Hi, I'm Alexis. I'm a Miami native as well. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated.
Okay.
I currently run an event agency, and my goal through my agency is to create a sense of community for professionals of color here in South Florida through travel, social events, community service, and anything else that cool and creative we can come up with. So.
Awesome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katrina Amia. I am a second-year doctoral program student with Hurston.
Hey.
I currently work at the College of Medicine in assessment and testing with our physician assistant program. It's fairly new. And I'm also a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated.
Okay.
Excellent.
So we have a panel full of Greeks tonight, and just phenomenal, brilliant, insightful human beings. Very excited. So tonight we're talking about what does it mean to be a black woman. And this is a very, I think, interesting topic. And I was telling, I think Danny and Katrina earlier that oftentimes, and Alexis too, oftentimes when we think of racial identities, we tend to think of them as a monolith, as just, this is what everybody is. Because I know you, then this is what everybody else is. And I think everyone here has just a different opinion on things. There might be some cultural similarities, but I think everyone also has their own lived experiences. And I would just kind of love to get into that. So one of the first questions that I have, and please everyone, if this is your first time on Woke Wednesdays, we do this every single Wednesday. Please feel free to pose comments, ask questions. Our panelists are brilliant, so please feel free to ask whatever you like. So one of my first questions is, how do you all identify racially, and how do you identify ethnically? And however you interpret that question, feel free to just kind of go at it. Whoever would like to go first. We can start over here if you want to.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, racially I identify as black. And ethnically I identify as half Nigerian, half Black American, because we can't really trace that back, unfortunately. They weren't taking logs of where they stole us from. So yeah, half Nigerian, half Black American, whatever that entails.
You always start a Black Panther? When Killmonger just Okay.
I identify as an African American, but I guess culturally I would just say black, just anything underneath the African diaspora. Because I grew up in South Florida, I was very immersed in Caribbean culture, and as I've gotten older, I began to kind of explore different things in regards to just what it is in quotations to be black. So I would just say culturally black, but racially or ethnically we African American.
Awesome.
I think when it comes to myself, this has been interesting for me. I've always identified as Haitian and Cuban, and so that's something. Yeah, so that's something. So I recognize. I guess you could say Haiti more in a sense because that's what I predominantly grew up with, and I was around Haitians, North Miami, all of that. So for me, racially, of course, I identify as Black. But as I've gotten older, like I was telling someone the other day, I had to like go to Tallahassee. I went to Florida State Seminoles, and that's how I actually kind of knew, I guess, what it was to be, I guess, Black, or a Black American of that culture, because I didn't know what that meant. Didn't know what meatloaf was. I was like, I don't know what grits, right? I was like, what is this? A casserole? I like had to figure these things out. So, right, but I think as I've gotten older and our plight is so important, I've been, of course, more educated outside of academia. I am, somewhat of the African diaspora, and I'm so proud of it, and so I think it's really important to know where our roots are from.
Awesome.
I would say that I identify ethnically as Black. However, my father is British, and my mother is African American, and my grandparents are Jamaican, and then the other set are African American. So it's a lot going on there, but I identify as Black.
Okay, awesome. So clearly we have, I think, just kind of like an amalgamation, or just like a lot of like ethnicities kind of going on, a lot of like different experiences. And not everyone's from Miami, or is everyone from Miami? You're from Connecticut. You're from Connecticut.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
And then you went to Tallahassee. You went to Tallahassee.
Yeah.
You went to Virginia. Yeah. You went to Hampton. So just different, also life experiences that you're bringing. So Mario said something that I can't quite pronounce.
These big words.
Rap.
I don't know what that means.
So let's kind of just jump into it. And y'all feel free to ask questions, post comments. What does it mean to you to be a Black woman? However you understand that question, just kind of please feel free to tell us when oftentimes you have to identify either on a Scantron or in your life. In a place, in a context. So what does it mean to you, like, to be a Black woman? I know it's a difficult question.
It is.
Because there's layers to this.
Yeah, for sure.
There's layers to, I can go first. I'm kidding.
What are you doing? I guess. Right.
What do you see Black women as?
We should have had Rachel Dolezal on here, maybe. I'm kidding.
I dislike.
I'm not trying to get in trouble. All right, so whoever would like to go first, what does it mean to you to be a Black woman?
I think when it comes to being a Black woman, like I was just having this conversation earlier, so I was like, okay, let me pick my brain, right? Because you never really, like, that question is never really posed to you, like, on, I guess, a consistent basis, but we experience it, right, as Black women all the time. And I think for us, of course, we can think of, I guess, the beauty that comes out of the pain that we have to suffer because of society, but then I want to focus on the resilience and what it is. Like, we're effortlessly beautiful in every aspect, and I think that, I mean, we are, when I think of Black women, we're the motherland of everything, literally. And so, but then on the flip side, you can see that because of what society has done, we can also be seen in a way as people just take from us, and then they cultivate on their own, forgetting that we are the roots of everything. So I think for us, being a Black woman is resilience, is beauty, is innovation. It's so many things that we are, and I think we are always sometimes, or most of the time, at the bottom totem pole, but then we create everything. So that's why I see it.
Well, yeah, okay.
That's the answer.
So that's the show. We're done. I'll see y'all next week. Okay. So who?
I was just to add on that. As I was thinking when you first asked the question, like the first thing that came to mind is just being strong. I think that's something that women of color, since all of the slavery days, we've always had to be strong and keeping our families together. Raising somebody else's children too that don't belong to us, breastfeeding other children, like all those things sort of came to mind. And even now, just as an African American or a Black woman, just being very strong, conscious. Of course, I think we're all beautiful, but that's just the biggest thing that I think that comes. And not that other women aren't strong, but I just feel like we have to be strong on so many different fronts in regards to being undervalued or underappreciated, underloved. Sometimes the men in our culture, find beauty and love in other spaces, and not because they just fall into it, but they purposely are looking for it because they undervalue someone that essentially looks like their mother, which is a completely different conversation. But again, my long story short, I think my answer is strong. So
for sure. I think I want to get into some stuff that you're saying. Absolutely. Please.
And I think to piggyback off of the strong aspect, I think that the whole strong black woman narrative can be problematic at times.
Yes.
Because there's this expectation for you to be strong even when you're not. So you never really have a moment to express that weakness. And I think sometimes, well, it's a negative, but it can also be a positive if you look at how the whole strong black woman narrative for black girls and black women coming up, it kind of saves you from like more of like a psyche crippling education.
Navigate through different spaces.
Of course.
As a woman, because you're not coached to be the whole idea of like the idolized womanhood.
Yeah.
That's not what it is to be a strong black woman. Like you're taking on different roles that's not woman like essentially.
Of course, right.
So I do think of the whole being strong as a very important, and when I think of being a black woman, that does come to my mind as well.
I think another great aspect of being a black woman is being able to hold this sort of double consciousness. So as you're navigating these spaces, you're aware of what others' perceptions may be, as well as the direction that you're trying to go. And then having to balance that, at times code switch, but being able to do so in such a way that you still get a seat at the table.
Yeah, that's taxing.
But yeah, that's what exactly.
It is emotionally taxing.
Exactly. I think for us, because I'm an educator and I work with these young girls all the time, and I think we, because I was just having this conversation with someone a couple of days ago about how our girls were not raised to be girls who live life. We're always raised to have to take care of others or be prepared to take care of others.
So true.
Especially as a black woman and having to conform to what everyone says all the damn time. And it's just like, but then where does that support come in, right? Where do we create those spaces for us to truly be supported outside, being connected to patriarchy? Where do we have a time to truly flourish as women and things that are not materialistic, not, for show, but for us to really look at, not honestly our weaknesses, but things we need help with, right? When we fall, when we get back up. So I think there's not enough true spaces for women to truly show all those sides.
Yeah, it's like a superhuman resilience.
Yep.
Yeah, but I will say I think over the last couple of years I've seen a lot more millennial women of color embrace each other and support each other and create these women brunches and these women days and these just this and learning how to celebrate each other. And even if no one else is celebrating you, there's somebody in your IG who be like, yes girl, like just learning how to self-celebrate rather than waiting for other people to celebrate. And I think sometimes people perceive it as we're looking down on other people. I don't think that's it at all. I just think it's more of let's celebrate ourselves, because if no one else is going to celebrate you, then you definitely have to make sure you pat yourself on the back and make sure you feel good every time you walk out the house.
So Miss AKA 85 was kind of asking, I think, to what you were kind of hinting at about how do the ladies feel about the label strong black woman, which is often added pressure to taking on all burdens and often expected to handle them alone. And she's saying, does anyone resent the strong black woman label? And she's saying y'all kind of just answered her question.
Yeah. Well, just to answer a little bit more to that, I think it's tough because your most black women are extremely educated and they're extremely knowledgeable, and I think the strong black woman label, to me, the only thing that I don't like about it is that it's usually attached to being angry.
Yep.
Right. And or that we have an attitude. Like all women have attitudes. Like it's just like I don't think it's anything that we do that other women don't do, but for a Latin woman maybe perceived as feisty, or for a white woman it's just perceived that she's a bitch. So I think for a woman being strong, period, I think there's always a negative connotation because traditionally they want us to be strong, but also they want you to be silent in the same process. But that's the only, I think, downside I would say, I think, to the strong black woman label. And working in a space where it's primarily male dominated, and then not only male dominated but white male dominated. You try to be conscious, because at the end of the day when you walk in, I'm a black woman. Like there's no secret. but being able to connect with them, taking down the racial barriers and saying, hey, like, I bring value to what you need. And so I think there's nothing wrong with being strong and confident in who you are, but I don't think that you should allow that to dictate how you move and dictate what you do, because you're afraid as a Black woman that you should be doing this or you can't do this, or whatever the case may be. So yeah.
Oh,
that's it.
Okay. So one thing that I'm kind of hearing is what I heard in everyone's kind of response. So what it means to be a Black woman was this idea of resilience, strength, having to people rely on you. So I feel like the opposite of that is maybe a type of violence, whether it's like discursive, physical, but this is in response to a need of something. Like, so resilient, you have to be resilient because of something. Mm-hmm. You have to be strong because of something. Mm-hmm. I have to have people like, I have to support people because of something. Mm-hmm. So that something to me is extremely problematic. But it's a historical something that has been happening since, we can trace it back to slavery, right? And we still see it today. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, is it sometimes dangerous, I don't know the word is, I'm still trying to think through this. How do we think about this when we talk about what it means to be a Black woman and we're using these adjectives? Is it possible to think of Black womanhood outside of maybe violence? I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes sense, and it brought me back to, when I was younger, like, just getting these messages that, when it comes to your white colleagues, counterparts, whoever, they can get a C and still pass and make it to the top, but you need to get A's, A+. It's like you always have to do 10 times better to make it into certain areas. Whereas being mediocre can get them to certain levels, So I think it's always been ingrained, like, that we're working up against something, whether it be the systems or the community or...
I think when it comes to, I guess, what we're up against, I think that we are up against a lot, but I think it's just how do we make that better for us. Right. I feel like as much as we have celebrated ourselves in the last couple of years, have created these spaces, but then I feel like in that sense, there's a lot of stuff that we have to work on that impact our womanhood. Like you're saying, we have to be resilient because of something. Mm-hmm. And I think that's taking that narrative, because again, it's taxing, like Katrina was saying, to always have to be fighting. Like, can I not just chill and kick back and eat some popcorn like Olivia Pope all the time? Like, and I think when that's what we're not. I think, if in our communities, in particular our communities of color, women, yes, oh my God, you're strong, but I'm still going to allow you to go through XYZ situation, right? Yeah. And how do I now fix that? And especially for our young girls coming up. So I was having this conversation yesterday where a lot of our young girls go through a lot and you don't hear it. Mm-hmm. You always think about when you hear about your girls coming up, oh, don't be fast. Don't wear this. Don't wear that. But then when are you protecting them or are you harming them? Mm-hmm. Are you protecting them for your own harm, or that you're already, or are you actually truly protecting them from this world? Or, you know what I'm saying? So are you building them up? Mm-hmm. And so for me, so I don't want to be like the negative Nancy of it, but I think I just see it as problematic, and I see it all the time with my students, and it breaks my heart.
No, for sure. And I think something that even in the process of always having to be resilient and strong, that we have to remember to not let it make us bitter. Right. And I think sometimes in the process it makes us very hard, so that femininity that we should have, we don't always have, because we're always on defense. Yeah. And to your point with your students, I mean, with human sex trafficking, Black girls are the #1 target for that, so that's something that, growing up in Miami, I always saw younger girls dating older guys. So now looking back, I'm like, damn, were they being moved and trafficked too? Because they tend to target our girls because usually they don't have fathers in the home, or if they do have both parents, they're working a lot of jobs, or both sometimes they're working 2 jobs to be able to take care of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with sex trafficking, a lot of times you think people are just getting kidnapped, but sometimes they're being trafficked and they're just being sent home. Mm-hmm. And they're going to school and they're living their everyday lives, but these men are using them and and grooming them to do what they want them to do, whatever the case may be, or making them feel loved when they don't feel, especially at a time when you're young, right? Even in different parts of your life, sometimes you don't feel as beautiful as other days. And I think just in the process of not being strong, that we have to know that it's okay sometimes to have one of those days you just don't feel that great, you know.
Exactly.
But don't let it take over you and let it happen for weeks and weeks and months. And then even if it does happen, that's okay too. But it's about just bouncing back. And I think that's something about, I think, just being Black in general, male or female, is that, you know, we're always like, I guess we're always striving or working towards something sometimes that other people are just given. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think if anything, it's something to be proud of, because it's like, it just makes you who you are. And I don't, it's all about perspective and looking at it in a certain way. I mean, you can look at it like, yeah, we're always, you know, 2 steps behind, but you know what, in the same token, usually we're overqualified for things that we're doing. So that means we actually know what we're talking about.
Right.
And I think usually minorities in general that are very well educated, they're, not that, I don't want anybody white that's watching to feel like they're not educated or not valued, but
you can feel
I mean,
that way. It's okay.
but the statistics show that, you know, there's certain races and certain groups that are overly educated, because we feel like we have to do that to be able to have that seat at the table. So,
and I think, to like what you're saying, it makes us who we are. I think what happens with that, the whole like narrative of being strong all the time, is we lose that empathy. Like you mentioned earlier, like who do we go to? Where do we go to relax? And I think because there's this narrative and this image of us being so strong, is we're like, they're built for this. That's what they are. They can handle it. So we kind of lose that empathy when things aren't in our favor, which they haven't really been for a long time. Right, basically. I think that's problematic in itself.
So we have a lot of great comments and questions that I want to read, but I do want to be a little selfish for a second. And it's very interesting that we're talking about being supportive. You're talking about, so Jasula did an amazing thing where she had the Young Boys Summit at Miami Jackson. You have the Young Girls Summit coming up. And that to me showed, I saw, in that moment I saw a young Black woman doing something for young, poor Black and brown boys, where you brought men from the community to be mentors to these kids. And I was thinking, I'm like, wow, like the role of Black women in being supportive, not in being powerful, not just for themselves, but for their children. And by their children, I don't mean just Black children. I mean everybody's children, which has been a historical thing. And I think about Woke Wednesdays, the people who have been the most supportive of Woke Wednesdays have been, for the most part, Black women. And I think about, wow, like, I don't want to say this is a natural thing, because I think that can be dangerous. But I do want to say that historically, Black women have been forced, maybe, to be strong. Like there's like been no choice. All right. So it's very, like, that to me is very interesting. Mariama, who's been a guest on the show, she talks about this a lot. And she makes great points about this. So I do want to get. So someone asked a question about Black Panther. I was trying to wait for that question. I didn't want to ask that question. And I will ask that question later. But I do want to ask this. Let me read these comments. Savi is saying, young Black male saying, I struggle with the balance of protecting and over-sheltering my younger sister every day. Just kind of getting at what y'all were talking about, how you're trying to protect. But then, am I causing more harm sometimes than good?
It's so funny because I have 2 mentees, and one of them in particular, a lot of the, I don't want to say mistakes, but things that I wish that I would have known, I like drive into her. Like, you need to do this, you need to do this, like, you should do this and navigate this way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I feel like you're supposed to always give back. The people, the generation after you should not have to struggle as much as you did, or make the mistakes that you did. Sometimes people have to learn the hard way. There's 2 ways you can learn. You can learn by listening, or you can learn by experience. And so I just think it's, you know, at least for me, I want the next person, male or female, to be better than me and to not have to go through what I went through. So I think, you know, as a sister and protecting your sister, something wrong with that. I don't think that you should baby them, because sometimes you have to let people make mistakes, and it hurts you to see someone make a mistake where you know that they don't have to go through this. But I think there's nothing wrong with, you know, being protective, but also in the process preparing them to be able to take care of themselves and to fish for themselves. So I think there's nothing wrong with, you know, I won't say sheltering, but protecting. But in the same token of protecting, you have to teach them to be able to fish and not depend on you to give them the fish. So I think there's nothing wrong with it. I just think it's just kind of like you have to just balance the both of it. So, you know. Hey, big sister, shout out to you.
So there's another great question that was asked. But one thing that I've seen, real quick before I get to that, everyone's saying hi to y'all. People are getting on. If y'all just logging on, tonight's topic is what does it mean to be a black woman. We have amazing guests, as you can see. People are saying great comments. Katrina, I'm guessing global midwife. I don't know if you know her. It's funny. I can always tell who people's friends are, right?
that black girl support, like, hey girl.
Chris earlier was like, that's my wife. He said something like that.
Oh, black love.
He said something. Chris Burt.
Love wins again. Love wins again.
Shout out to Chris.
Love wins again.
Shout out to Chris. So this word sister, you said sister. I've seen this word sis, like lately on social media, is kind of blowing up. I see you sis. What's up, sis? Like this has been like a trending thing I've seen recently, and I was wondering, we could talk about that a little bit as far as like camaraderie.
Yeah. And I think Queen is starting to like
Queen.
For males and females, I think both. Well, at least some guys use it as a
King.
a
Yeah,
term of
I have a frat brother who he will only call us that, King, and I'm like.
Okay.
One of my line brothers told me I can't live in Wakanda. He said, well, "You're not welcome here."
Oh,
he
you can't be the white guy.
He said, "Man, not the one."
I still had trust issues.
It's alright. You gonna get through this.
You will be there.
I'm applying for refugee status in Zamunda.
I'm here for it. You know what?
I'm trying to go to Zamunda.
They probably would take you. I have no doubt they would take you.
You know what? I'm good. You know what? I'm good.
We have a better immigration process. Don't worry.
We want dreamers.
You know what?
Oh my! And that happened, and then life.
So thank you for tuning in once again. She said we want dreamers. Am I red? Oh man. Okay.
I hope it's a happy red, 'cause that's like a good comment. Yes, we want that. It's a happy comment. Yes. Oh my god, I'm not gonna tell my story, but it's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, good. No, we can talk about that another day. Listen.
Yes.
So I do have a question.
You guys work really hard too, so that's all.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna just read this question. Great question. Yeah, great question. I'm curious if these ladies identify more with black men or with white women.
That is so interesting.
On a womanist level, on a womanist level, or on a racial level. Very interesting question. Thank you for asking that. I'm mad that when I said black men, you're like, huh? And then when I said white women, you're like, oh. Yeah, everybody was like, it's disappointment. Y'all did.
It's kind of like, damn.
So please, what do y'all think? This is a great question. Great question.
Like my knee kicker response is like black men just because like the black thing type of thing, and yeah, that's just like my knee kicker reaction. But I'm not. It just depends. I guess in a sense of what, but my knee kicker reaction. That's my knee kicker answer.
That is a very interesting question.
So she's saying that
black men or white.
He's saying, do you identify more with black men or with white women? And he's creating this. I guess what he's getting at is that do you identify more on a racial level or on a gender level? That's really what he's asking. On a racial commonality or on a gender commonality.
What's interesting is I had an argument with a Hotep a while back about this, and he was really upset that he was really upset about the Women's March. He was really mad that the one that I think it was the one in DC, but and the one that we also had, not the one that we had here, the other part of that, the other one.
There's a Black Women's March.
Yeah, I was a part of that as well.
Oh, you were there?
Yeah, I was one of the workers.
Oh, we went.
Yeah, I need you to get. It's alright.
I'm sorry.
Right?
I'm sorry.
But yeah, I think he was really upset. He's like, well, why we got into an argument. He's like, well, why would you, he's like, black women. He felt like sexism should take a back burner to racism. Because he felt like he's like, when we fix racism, all of us will then we'll be able to focus on sexism because technically racism is affecting all of us. So this was his argument. And so, of course, I shut it down. But it's interesting that I think this is a question that I feel like, it wasn't until recently that I really heard men having that conversation about how are you checking your patriarchy? Like, are you doing it? Because I had with the pussy potluck. I did not hold this. It was a conversation.
That sounds quite interesting.
No, it was called a pussy potluck, and shout out to Jasmine Rogers. And it was a conversation where girls got together and talked about their experience from all different backgrounds. But then men would stand in the room and had their own conversation. We joined together at the end to talk about how do we then, of course, support women. And in those conversations, men, there were black men then, they were talking about how, sometimes it's difficult for them to call out their friends when it comes to sexism, right? And issues like that. Yeah. But then there was an idea that we can all do this together. We can handle both topics. So I don't think it has to be or an ultimatum. I think people are working together to eradicate some of these issues in general. It doesn't have to be choose this or choose that, in my humble opinion.
And it's tough for black women, I would say, because you're literally like a double minority. Because you're in the women's space, so you have that struggle as being a woman, especially in fields that are male dominated, and then on top of that you have you're black, so like it's hard to say one or the other is more important, because they're both important, because there are a lot of things that women struggle and push through. For example, like when if I'm correct, when black people were first allowed to vote, black men were allowed to vote, but black women were not allowed to vote. So it's like it's I don't know, it's like you can't say one is more important than the other, because sometimes with rooting for black doesn't always protect black women, unfortunately, because all black men are not rooting in black women's corners. So it's kind of hard to say one is more important than the other. I think it has to be like a very delicate balance. I think all minority groups, if it's if it's gay, black, women, we all have to fight and support each other. I think that we allow our differences to segment us more than our bringing together what we have in common, which at the end of the day we're all humans.
And on top of that, we had on class, right? Not just race and class, or not race and gender, but class. The issues that Oprah Winfrey faces are not the same ones that a woman in Richmond Heights, right? The single mom is facing right now, right? Talk about money and wealth. Different experience. Might be a similar racial, maybe, but a class experience, that's two different things, right? Did y'all want to say something?
I mean, I was just gonna speak to the idea that I think that maybe when I was younger, maybe I would choose sides, but then as I've become older and more wiser, now I'm trying to look at it from a both and perspective, and that's what I do as a therapist a lot. It's like, okay, yes, Black Lives Matter, but also the kids in Parkland do too, so how can I be an example for those in my field and my colleagues and friends who are hurt, by the response, empathy wise, or the lack thereof.
There's a lot of good literature that I can share with y'all. If anyone's interested in reading this, in the 70s, we saw this really strong movement. There's like 3 waves of feminism, but what we see in the 70s is black women really taking charge, especially black lesbian women. We're really pushing like we're black, we're women, we're lesbian women, like we're also poor, like so this intersectional approach, right? Really interesting stuff. If y'all want, I can definitely post it on Wednesdays and I can send it to everybody, because to them it was almost impossible to like take apart these identities, unless you're in a place where one identity might be more salient than another, right? If you're with all black women, then obviously you don't have to. You're around women, so that identity is salient right now. So it's very, very interesting. I can definitely send y'all some articles. We have some really cool questions here. Let's see. Miss AK is saying, curious why black men fear that a black woman's success is a link to trying to be white. That's interesting. We can talk about that. Ashley saying, ooh, what'd she say? She said, ooh, Alexis, black man gonna get you for that comment.
I can't.
And I do want to talk about black men later on tonight. So Lisi's asking, what has been the most difficult part of being a black woman? Also, what is the most enjoyable part about being a black woman?
Well, I think that, once again, just going back to my youth. So I was raised in I went to predominantly white schools, right? But then when I moved to South Florida, I was like, oh wow, look at my people thriving, and just connecting more with my culture. And since I've been here, I have had to navigate predominantly white spaces because of the field that I'm in. And so I would say that the most difficult thing for me has been, I guess, hurting in silence at times. And biting my tongue on things because I want to remain professional, right? Because I know that my assertiveness will be misinterpreted for aggression or something else. So I'm always just in my head about, especially if I'm in a group of all white women, how am I being perceived? Can I say it this way? Should I say it like? But when I'm with my sisters, it's a whole different story. I'm a completely different person in different contexts.
Sorry.
It was like you have to police yourself.
Yes, right.
I do have a question, like a side question. Do you police your hair?
I have. I'm not even gonna lie.
In those spaces.
I have. I remember when I started working at an eating disorder facility, and they look at you like, "What are you doing here? You don't know anything about eating disorders. This is a white woman's issue, right?" That's the stereotype. But little do they know that in our culture, I mean, we have binge eating, we have overeating, and all that. So in that space, I did find myself, okay, so at the interview, and some of this did come from family and some of the things I was taught. When you go to the interview, make sure that you either have a sew-in or have your hair straightened. Not because you should think of yourself of any less, but because the way that they're perceiving you. I always have to think of how others are perceiving me first before I can walk in my truth. So I went to the.
Rewind. Can you say it again?
I always have to think of how others are perceiving me before walking in my truth. Sometimes. And so I went to the interview. I was like, okay, I got the job. All right, I'm gonna release the fro like in 5 weeks. Like I literally was like, let me get to know these people. Let me show them my personality first, and then I'm gonna just be Danny.
Oh no.
And so. And it's a shame to be that way, but then
it's the truth. Because even sometimes in-house, we say that we should do certain things. And at Hampton School of Business, there was always this pull and tug because they were grooming us for corporate America. But even though everybody didn't want to go to corporate America. But I don't think there's anything wrong with teaching you how to dress properly. I mean, for me, when I go to an interview, I just don't want to be distracting. So even if I'm not black, I don't want to wear too much makeup or have a dramatic hairstyle because I want them to listen to what I'm talking about. I want them to know that and see me and not see, oh, your makeup's on fleek. Like, that's not those are the type of comments that you want at an interview. You want people to engage with you. But I've done that. It was so funny. My last, one of my jobs at, I guess I shouldn't say the agency, but I worked for a government agency. And I interviewed a few times for the role because they were moving me around to different departments. But I interviewed with my natural hair. And then when I went to my first day of work, I had straight hair. And they were like, they asked my manager, I thought you hired that girl with the hair. And I was like,
hair became the topic.
I was known with the girl with the hair. And I was like, no, it's me, like just straight. Like, because one time I interviewed, I had braids. And I was just like, I'm not taking out these braids. I just got them done. I paid money to get them done. I was like, they're just going to just take me as I am. Like, if they don't want me, they don't want me. They called me back, and then my hair was in its natural state. And then by the time I started my role, it was straight. So they had saw me in different spaces. So it is very interesting how people identify and intrigue with your hair. I mean, I've had employees or like coworkers to be like, hey, like, what did you do today? Like, and I've literally have shown them like my sew-in and how it's done because they were just so intrigued and I was tired of them staring. So I'm like, let me just answer the question because
I even had a supervisor say one time, she looked at my sew-in and said, oh, the other day it was a little different. Diversity. I was like, what?
Because they're like, literally, how do you do that?
Hold on. Is anyone not stuck on this? Hold on.
No, man.
Is anyone not stuck on this?
We right here. No, Katrina, go ahead, child. Y'all can talk. Go ahead.
Like, I go through the whole
please,
interview process where, like, I'll go with the straight hair, and then by not 5 weeks, I gave them the first day with that hairstyle, and the next day it was Wakanda forever. Because I just can't confine myself that way, and like because we're forward and accepting our naturalness. It's been a long time, but they're not there yet, and it's unfortunate that we have to conform to maneuver through the system, but it's necessary right now. And I look forward to the day where we can normalize things with natural hair as professional, whatever they call professional, dreads as professional, or whatever. but I've been there with the falsifying. I call it falsifying.
I can,
but doing what I have to do to get where I need to get until it becomes normalized.
Yeah.
You see, I've had a completely different experience.
I've
never had to ever like change my. I never worried about that my whole life. Like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? I've been because I'm like, this is what you gonna get. Either you want my resume or I'm gonna keep it moving. I've always
never
really
got the, oh my God,
no, but I've never. I've always heard this, but I've never personally experienced it. I mean, of course, I experienced a part of like, oh my God, your hair was short. I don't understand how it got long the next day. Like I'm like, how did you think my hair grew like this? Shit, lady thought I grew my hair, but I've never had to experience discrimination at the interview, as I know, right, on service, because I'm just like, this is what you're gonna get, like, and that's it. And so, and it breaks my heart that other, not just black women, but black men also have to deal with this when it comes to embracing who they are. And I'm just like, no. And if you have an issue with my, then I'm not gonna work for you. I'm gonna keep it moving.
So I want to draw a line real quick, because I think you said something very important, that it's one thing with being like, what is happening?
Right.
There are people who have literally never seen a black person before in their life.
Yes, it's true. Iowa.
I'm from North Carolina. Like,
everywhere.
Like, I was the first Latino a lot of people actually met. They're like, oh, like, I didn't know y'all spoke English.
That's very true.
Yeah, motherfucker, I'm speaking what you mean, like, right? So like, and I hate that it's an extra burden, but if we don't educate folk, like
it can be so exhausting. Continuing.
Absolutely, and I think that's why the work you're doing about racial trauma is so important.
Yes.
So there's an ignorance level, and ignorance just means a lack of knowledge.
Right.
But ignorance can also lead to violence. And I think what happened to you, the fact that you felt that you had to show them how the hair is sewn, like the intricacies of, that to me is like,
oh, not I.
Yeah, they're really curious.
But they wear weave too, though.
They do. But I'm trying to call it extension.
It was an older Latin woman.
They call it extensions.
And I want to her to offense. Yeah, she was an older Latin woman, but she was in the process of hair loss. So I think she was, in my opinion, maybe she was
trying to figure out an alternative.
Yeah. So, because also I was the youngest person in the workplace, and then I'm young, I'm black. It's just something different because most of my coworkers were older and they were white and Latin. So for you to have the extreme double opposite, age-wise and culturally-wise, of them, there was just a lot of questions. And my first, that's when I first cut my hair off. So when I came in with the short fro, it was just like, okay. But I will say that sometimes we make more of a big of a deal out of it than other people do. And there's been times where things that they think about, we think about it more than what they think about it, because at the end of the day, you're still black. Like, and I mean, they may be curious, but I think sometimes we beat ourselves up so much to try to fit in with main America's standards in regards to beauty and professionalism and things like that. But I feel like if you are dressed appropriately on the outside in regards to clothes, I don't think hair is as big of a deal. To me, more makeup and color sometimes. I think it's more, can be, and that's anybody, white, black, or in between, because you can come in with pink hair, it doesn't matter if you're white or black, it's still pink hair. Unfortunately, pink hair may be more embraced on a white woman than on a black woman. Right. But I think, professionalism is very relative depending on the industry that you work in. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you work on Wall Street, if you want to make money and be a part of that, you got to look like that. And it's nothing until you're in a space of ownership, you have to play by their rules. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's the industry that you want to go into, or if you want to be a swimmer, like there's certain things, or if you want to be a runner, like there's certain things to do with your hair that other people can or cannot do. Right. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I just think based upon your goals and what you want in life, that's what you have to get to that point until you're at that level where you feel comfortable where it's not going to affect you. Because you have to decide, okay, unfortunately you have to decide, is it more important for me to express myself or to get this job and get this money?
Right. And I guess essentially, to come to their defense again, the whole natural hair movement is fairly new. So for all these years, they've been experiencing us in the workplace or just anywhere with our relaxers and things of that nature. So now all of a sudden we're proud to express who we are. It's new for us and it's new for them as well. So it's kind of like this shock, I guess, to come here.
The first black woman millionaire in the United States made her money off hair relaxers and chemicals to put in the hair, and it, I think is again, it's this reaction to a violence, which seems to kind of be a theme tonight. I do want to say too, professionalism is is premised off a whiteness scale.
Of course.
A white, male, cisgendered,
Mm-hmm.
heterosexual scale.
Yeah.
So whatever is not professional to him is deemed as unprofessional.
Yeah.
Which is very true.
Right.
I've had to experience that as well. So the difference between doing therapy in a professional clinic where they're receiving insurance and all these types of payments coming from all these different directions is very different from doing in-home therapy. So when I was working in the arena of substance abuse and stuff like that, a very white populated environment, it was like, oh, could you use this word instead of that word? Or could you, like, I think one day I left a message, you know, just call me back, we can chat about this later. You know, even that word chat was
You're
informal,
lying.
so serious.
Wow.
Whereas when I was doing in-home therapy, because I'm going into someone's home, it's a little different, so you
personal,
have to take a step down and like, you know,
but I feel
change
like
up the
therapy is
language.
personal either way.
Exactly.
One interesting point is that you were talking. So you're in education, right? You're in psychology, you're in education, but you're more on an administration level right now, right? And you're in the corporate world, right? So it's very interesting to hear different experiences about this. But then you were saying that once a woman is in a power position, that she might be able to do something. Michelle Obama is perhaps the most powerful black woman to ever live on the planet, right? Systemically.
The best first lady.
For the
No
only first
shade.
lady
No
with two,
shade,
the
don't
only,
cut our shade,
the only
shade.
first lady with 2 Ivy League degrees. But it's interesting because she never wore her hair out like naturally, right? Like in a fro at least.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm trying to think. I'm
in
trying
a
to
puff
think.
or
That's
anything.
what I was just thinking. Did she ever?
Look at me with the language puff.
I'm trying to think, but I think there's nothing wrong with if you don't want to wear your hair. That's okay. Like I think it's whatever you want, and you know I feel like as long as you're healthy, I think healthy hair to me is more important than it being natural or being relaxed. Because being natural, I mean, being not using chemicals in your hair may or may not be for everybody. And I don't. In the natural trend, I think we're starting to down women that want to wear weave or down women that want to relax their hair. Like you do what's best for you, sis. Like as long as you come out looking like a queen and you feel beautiful, like I think that's all that matters. And I think sometimes now that it's changing, it's before I think there was more aggression to women that did not use relaxing products on their hair. Now it's flipping where now being natural is more popular, it's trending. So if you're still perming your hair, you're like, using that crack on your hair. Like,
even like the phrase natural trend is problematic.
Exactly.
Because it's like that's you. Like
yeah,
that's,
it is. Yeah,
it is. It's
yeah.
No, but I have a lot of people who, when it came to being natural, because I was natural my whole life until
Going back
college,
natural.
and I didn't know what to.
It's
I didn't
going
know.
back.
Right.
It's going back natural.
Right. And so I was like, I wore my natural hair like my whole life, and now I got to college. I shouldn't know do that. I was like, I'm just gonna throw this permanent. And worst decision ever. I just adjust up. That's what I say. But I think when I meet women now, they're so uncomfortable, right? It's the idea that we're now accepting who we are and what it looks like. We have girls who never, like, since their age of 3 had perms, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
But I think now, women are uncomfortable. Now we have this discrimination of coils and curls and what that is and what is deemed beautiful.
4C, 4A,
Different hair
Yeah.
types.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think there's like a discrimination of not hair type as well. So I think it just jumps. If it's not one thing, it's another. But I think it's just, again, this is our way of hopefully. It's not, I don't think it's a trend, because this is like, because you're saying who you are.
Yeah.
It's now, because we've never been in a space where that was actually truly cultivated on a wide, you know, if people used to do this a long time ago, but now it's about access, and I think people forget about that. I think, you know, especially now this natural hair and health kick, we forget, or we down people who eat whatever, and, you know, but it's all about access. So do people have access to these products? Do they have access to these items to make themselves, I guess, the best that it could be, and what we think bring us back to our roots? Do they truly have that opportunity to do that?
And especially if it's not culturally passed down.
Exactly, it's hard.
If some people that, like yourself, that grew up, you know, in your hair in its natural state, that was culturally passed down to you. So if something else is culturally passed down to you, can you really shame someone for something that, you know, unless they decide to educate themselves, they decide this is not, even though this is what I've been raised and this is not for me anymore, you know.
I think one of the phrases that absolutely kills me is like, oh, natural hair ain't for everybody.
Oh, I hate
How
that.
if you're born that way?
How?
God made you not be for you. Like, I don't understand.
Right,
that.
yeah.
I think it's more just about maintenance and what, because some people are not good in doing their hair. And I think either way, because everything takes work. If it's your hair in its natural state, if it's weave, if it's a sewing, like you gotta make sure you gotta get it retightened. You make sure you detangle.
Bring a comb and brush everywhere.
That's a whole nother episode. Real quick. One thing that's very interesting to me when we see historically black men, Nat King Cole, it used to be called conking, right? So black men would conk their hair, right? They would put chemicals in it. It was a way of what's it called? Perming it, relaxing it, right? Malcolm X, who was a person who was so pro-black in his later years, he used to conk his hair, right? It wasn't until he met the Nation of Islam that they were like, "Whoa, what are you doing? That's the white man's thing." Yada yada yada. But now, how often do you see a black man with their hair permed or relaxed? It's very rare.
No, a lot of times you don't.
Cat Williams, right?
Well, that's on the more dramatic end. But you can still perm your hair when it's flat.
But I'm saying it's rare. My point is that it's rare. Back then, it was more common because you had to assimilate. Black men had this of assimilating, right?
Yeah.
And that became a movement, right? And now, I guess the salons chop became the inception, right, of this movement. And I have seen people downplay the chop, like, oh, it's just now becoming cool. I used to be natural before that. But I'm like, what's the point of that argument? Like, people are becoming insecurities are a real thing.
Yes.
Self-awareness is a real thing, and I think why demean that? If anything, it's like, hey, how about let me show you some things that I do too?
Exactly.
Right?
That conversation even came up with the new Black Panther movie coming out. People saying, well, I've been in Wakanda forever, showing their big African earrings. Like, I love my culture.
A competition. Yeah, I don't like, why is it a competition for us about blackness? Or this idea of what it is to be our authentic self? Because technically, I know there are some of our fellow brothers and sisters who are in the continent of Africa looking at Americans like, you know what I mean? Right. So,
but even something, I think in Miami, it happens all the time with, Africans, Caribbeans, and in quotations, Black Americans, right? So it's something that unfortunately, it's still to me like just a breakdown or a transition down of the Willie Lynch of just being able to segment them and to separate them. And I mean, growing up, there was always, people were always joking. I remember like the African booty scratcher thing was like a joke thing, right? But then also like you have Caribbeans that don't want to per se always identify with Black America, or their parents denounce them from being a part of that.
That's American media. That's a complete impact of American media.
Of course.
So Instagram's about to kick us off. Real quick, so we're about to end it and restart it. In the next section, I would like for us to address colorism. We're gonna talk about Black Panther.
And Black Men, right?
We're gonna talk about Black men.
Hey, Black men.
And and I do want to get a little bit into ethnicity. Oh no, I would like to start off the next portion with non-Black Latinos in Miami, and when we talk about racism and anti-Blackness, especially in how that is a type of violence against Black women. So how we can have racism within minority circles.
Groups. Okay.
So I'm gonna end it and then we'll restart it.